and I want to continue on where I read. We were talking about, the importance of the Old Testament. But at this point, we're going to answer the next question, and that goes into, understanding exactly who the Pharisees, Sadducees, and scribes were and what they represented during the times of Yeshua, and conversely, who they represent today. Who are the scribes of today and the Pharisees of today and the Sadducees of today? Okay. So we're going to read the scripture from the book of Daniel. The first scripture is from the second chapter of the book of Daniel, first verse, second verse. It reads on this wise. And in the second year of the reign of Nebuchadnezzar, Nebuchadnezzar dreamed dreams, and his spirit was troubled, and his sleep broke from him. Then the king commanded to call the magicians and the astrologers and the sorcerers and the Chaldeans for to show the king his dreams. So they came and stood before the king. This is the next scripture, Daniel chapter 1, verse 17 and verse 20. As for these four youths, y'all gave them knowledge and skill in all learning and wisdom. And Daniel had understanding in all visions and dreams, and in all matters of wisdom and understanding, that the king inquired of them. He found them 10 times better than all the magicians and astrologers that were in all the realm. And I'm gonna read this portion, but I just want to explain the scripture just to set it up for those that aren't familiar with it. So in the book of Daniel, during this period of time, the children of Israel were under the captivity of not only the Assyrians, but now the Babylonians, okay? Nebuchadnezzar was the king of Babylon. And, they captured the children of Israel. The Assyrians captured the northern kingdom first of the children of Israel. And then about 100 or so years after that, the Babylonians came to power, and they not only conquered the Assyrians, but they conquered the southern kingdom of Israel, which was known as the kingdom of Judah. And those are the last of the children of Israel that they conquered. And Daniel was a part of that crew. And Daniel, he kind of rose up in the ranks of, Nebuchadnezzar's court. And he did so by correctly interpreting. One, he did so by maintaining his stance as a son of Yah, worshiping Yah. Okay, because there's the whole story about Nebuchadnezzar offering Daniel and them the king's meat, and he sought to change their names to Babylonian names. And they essentially weren't having all that. They were like, look, we're Hebrew Israelites. This is our culture. This is our name. This is our God. We're not changing our names. We're not changing our God. We're not eating the flesh, the pork of the king. This is who we are. We're not changing. So there was some animosity between them, and he challenged them. And they prayed to Yah, made them prevail and all that. But Nebuchadnezzar, at this point, he dreamed a dream. And, his dream, like I mentioned earlier, was that of a statue that had 4 levels. And he saw one was iron, one was brass and gold, and one was a mixture of iron and clay. And it was the feet, 10 toes. And we broke that down already in a previous session. But when he went to his magicians and he went to his wise men of his court, and he asked them, hey, I need y'all to interpret this dream. What's going on? And the sorcerers, the astrologers, all of them, they tried to interpret it, but they couldn't. And then some of them say, we don't even know. Your dream is out there. We can't interpret it. And so he had them, put to death. He essentially said, anybody that can't interpret this dream, and I come to you and you can't do it effectively, I'm going to put you to death. So that's essentially what happened. But then he went to Daniel, because Daniel was known as being someone who could, effectively and efficiently interpret dreams, similar to, Joseph, when he was in Egypt under Pharaoh. Nebuchadnezzar asked him, okay, well, I need you, this is the dream. He explained it to him. He said, well, what does it mean? And Daniel said, okay, give me this amount of time and I'll interpret it for you. And he gave him that time. He came back and he effectively interpreted the dream. Yeah, the dream was about him seeing different nations that were, nations that were Gentile nations opposed to the creator that would come into power. Okay. And each nation will subsequently be weaker spiritually than the nation before it. Okay. Because each mineral or metal that was on the statue, as you went down to the feet, it got to a weaker and weaker, metal, to the point where it was mixed with clay, which is the current Euro-Gentile Roman system of the Western world now. Okay. And when he broke all that down and said vision, this is what you do and all that, Nebuchadnezzar was so blown away. So you know what? I got to elevate you. You the man now. No longer am I going to look to these other magicians and sorcerers and astrologers. They don't know nothing. You know everything. And he lifted him up, made him in a high position in his court and all that. So this is the scenario. So essentially, Daniel proved that his God, Yor, and the power that he had by maintaining his alignment with the Creator is the source of his ability to be able to interpret the dreams effectively, as opposed to the magicians and astrologers of these other pagan cultures and worshiping their other pagan gods who didn't have the divine wisdom to interpret one dream. Okay, so this is the relationship that Ben-Ami is trying to make between those men, the quote unquote, the world wise men and the wise men of Yor. It reads on this wise. Here in Daniel, we find our answer. During the reign of Nebuchadnezzar, after dreaming a dream which greatly troubled him, Nebuchadnezzar summoned the wise men of Babylon, at that time called magicians, astrologers, sorcerers, and Chaldeans, updating this situation to modern Babylon, quote unquote, America, with the understanding of today. We know that Nebuchadnezzar summoned his cabinet of Politburo. I guess it's a Latin word. Today, they have changed the titles for reasons of deception, but their functions are still the same. Today, they are referred to as secretaries of state, attorney general, secretary of defense, and national security advisor. Whenever the president is troubled, he summons these men and places the problem before them. They must know all things taking place in the firmament above and on the earth beneath. These men are the wise men of Babylon, the magicians, astrologers, sorcerers, Chaldeans of yesterday. So in today's time, just like in Nebuchadnezzar's time, you have Gentile nations with a quote unquote, king or ruler who presides over all these nations. Today in America, that's the president. He's known as the leader of the free world. And when he is faced with certain situations that he can't understand or interpret, he goes to these groups of individuals. And even though they have different names that are like, political and, represent their stature in the government, they're essentially the quote unquote wise men, astrologers, magicians, sorcerers of Nebuchadnezzar's day. And that's what they represent.